Let's talk about some creative masking. Because we talked about using layer masks before, but when we did, we were doing relatively straightforward things. We might have had an adjustment on a layer, and we painted with black to prevent the adjustment from applying to an area. Or we were doing compositing, where we had two photographs, but they looked really similar. Like maybe one was a waterfall with a slow shutter speed, and the other was a waterfall with a fast shutter speed. And we masked one so we could use the greenery in the fast shutter speed version and use the waterfall from the slow. Well, now let's do it in a different way. Let's do more creative masking. We'll even use this guy. So far, everything we've had in a mask, in general, has been like paint. But we can put pictures in a mask. You just have to know how to get them in there. So let's see what we can do here. First, I'm going to go to the Select menu and choose All. The only reason I'm doing that is so I can copy, because otherwise copy is grayed out if you don't first select what you want. I no longer need the selection, so I'm going to choose Deselect, although that step is not critical. You could leave the selection sitting there. I just find it to be distracting. And now what I'd like to do is add a layer mask to this layer. Now, if I had an older version of Photoshop, I can't do that to the background layer. I'd have to double click on the name of the layer and change it to something else. But in the newest version of Photoshop, they finally made it so you can add a layer mask when the background layer is active, and it simply renames it for you. So it saves you a step. But if you want to paste something into the layer mask, it's not as easy as you might think. You might look in the Layers panel and say, well, the layer mask is what's active because I can see its corners are highlighted. And if I grab the paintbrush tool and paint, that's where the paint goes. So when I choose Paste to paste something in, I'd expect it to go in that mask, wouldn't you? But if I paste right now, it doesn't go in the mask. It creates a brand new layer. So we need to figure out how can we paste something into a mask. And here's how it's done. In order to paste something into the mask, like a picture, you need to have the mask visible on your screen. And there's two ways to make the mask visible. I've only shown one of those two methods in the last 3 days. That one method was where we could view it as a red overlay. And that was using the backslash key. I don't know if you remember that, but we could backslash and see the red overlay. Well, that's visible on the screen, and at that time I could choose Paste and the picture would go right into the mask. The other way I could do it is I can view the mask directly. So it's not overlaid on top of the picture. Instead, I'm seeing the entirety of the mask. And the way you do that is you move your mouse on top of the mask, you hold on the Option key, that's Alt in Windows, and you click on it. When you Option click anywhere within that mask in your Layers panel, it will change what you're looking at, so that now you're looking at the contents of the mask. To get out of that view, you Option click on the mask a second time in the Layers panel. Just anywhere within the mask thumbnail, Option click on it. That's Alt clicking in Windows, you're back to normal. So when I Option click on it, that's when I'll go over here and choose Paste, and that's when the picture actually goes into the mask. And so if you remember, the way layer masks work is black hides things, right? So right now my black shirt is going to cause my shirt to disappear in the normal photo when we view it. And do you see the black that's near the rim of my hat? You know, like where the hat touches my head? Well, since it's black, it's going to make the area in the photo that it's near where the hat touches my head completely go away. Also, parts of my eyes, under my chin and all that kind of stuff are going to go away. And let's see what it looks like. I'm just going to Option click to get out of this view. I'm Option clicking specifically on the mask. All right. Now, I actually want the opposite of that because too much of me is disappearing. And so if I want the opposite of what's in a mask, I always choose this, Invert. All right, so now I have the opposite, but it just looks kind of weird It's me with some checkerboard blended in. It's not really what I'm thinking about. First, let's get the checkerboard to go away and just replace it with something. In order to replace it with something, I'll go to the bottom of my layers panel and I'll add what's called a solid color layer. I click on the same icon you use for adding adjustments, solid color layer, and for now we'll pick white. And I'm going to put that underneath, so I'll drag that down under. Okay, so at least now I don't see a checkerboard. So now it's just kind of weird though if I look at this, because the mask is just making my picture look somewhat lighter than usual. That's because some white is showing through. So let's look at that mask. I'm going to option click on the mask. Here's its contents. Well, let's modify it. Why don't we run filters on it? See if we can get some other kind of creative result that's based on the picture of me. I'm going to come in here and try something that's called color halftone. Let's see what color halftone does. Well, it asks me for some numbers. The main thing that's important in here is just this number, the maximum radius. If I click OK, it means what's the biggest circle I can get. But that is known as a halftone. And if I want the circles that make it up to be bigger, when I ran the filter, I should type in a higher number. It was at 24. I could have typed in 48 or something else, and the circles would be larger in size. Or if I want them to be smaller in size, type in a smaller number. But now let's see what it looks like when we're no longer viewing the mask. I'll hold on the Option key and I'll click on the mask. So now we have something making me disappear in certain areas. And I'm not sure if I'll like it better this way or when it's inverted. Let's find out. I'm not sure at all. Either one of them is somewhat interesting, but I think I recognize myself more in this one. Then I could further add creative treatments to it. I can go down to the letters FX, and there's a choice in there called drop shadow. And therefore each hole that's been poked in there is going to have a little shadow to give it some dimension. And I could add something like bevel and emboss to give it a little 3D edge if I wanted to, whatever. But you see how I can put things in a mask and then I can filter them. I'm not saying that this is the best result. Let's try it with other things. I just needed an image to try things on. But the main thing I want to get across here is that you can paste pictures in there. That can be a picture of anything. And if it's something that has a lot of black and a lot of white, you can then get your photo within that shape. And if you want it to be a little more creative, run filters on it to distort it. So let's do that with this image. What I like about this image is I notice she's wearing a black dress. And I know that black in a layer mask hides things. The background is largely white or close to it. White makes things show up. So I can do things that, if this is in a mask, would make it so it only shows up in those bright areas that are here. And it doesn't show up at all in the dark. Or if I invert it, we'll get the opposite. So let's go open this and let's grab a different picture to put on top of her. I'm going to drag this over with the Move tool, drag it down, and I'll move it so I can see the whole thing. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the picture that's here, I'll select all and copy. Then let's put the picture on top, and let's add a layer mask. And in order to get the picture I copied into the layer mask, let's come in here and option click on the mask. That's alt clicking in Windows, and then paste. Get rid of the selection. Okay. And now let's see what it looks like. Now I think I might want it in the opposite area. Let's find out, see if it looks good. I'll go over here and just choose Invert. The mask is what's active, so the mask is what's going to be inverted. Now we have it just in that one area where her outfit is the main thing. And I think it's starting to look a little bit interesting, but I think we need to refine it. So what I can do then is simply adjust what's in the mask. We could use levels. I don't know if you remember or not, but in levels, this slider here forces areas to black. So if I push this over, more and more areas in the mask should turn black, and that, in a mask, black hides things. So as I bring this in, more and more of the photo of the sunset will end up being hidden, and if I can move it in far enough, I might be able to get it off of all the background. Then the other side forces things to white, and in a mask, white makes things show up, doesn't it? So if I pull this in, more and more will show up. And so it's up to me exactly how I would like that to come in. And then I can move the middle triangle, and that'll control the transition between what's showing up and what's disappearing. And then finally, I could grab the paintbrush tool. And it's just a picture, the mask, it's just a picture attached to a layer. You can still paint on it. So I don't like that right now. I think there's a cloud in her nostril. So I could come in here with my paintbrush tool, paint with black, and just say, get out of there. Get out of her nostril. Get out of her eye sockets. Bring those back. Maybe I want her chin to look a little more normal. Make sure I have a soft edge. Or no, I like it blending into her chin, actually. Maybe I want to get it off of part of her hair. If so, just paint with black. You'll get it off wherever you paint. So if you don't like it on her arm on the left of the photo, just paint. Bring it right back. That kind of stuff. So I just don't like it down here where you see it turn to a kind of a black line, so I might mellow that out. So does that give you some ideas where we can creatively mask things? What I would do is look for high contrast images, images that contain large areas of black or large areas of white. It doesn't have to be black or white actually, just it needs a large area that is dark or a large area that is bright, or ideally both. Big areas of bright and dark and not a lot in between. And that's in general what I had here. Is the reason why I selected this image to be used was I saw this huge area of black and instantly my brain said mask. And then I saw a bright background and I was like, yeah, those two things, really bright, really dark and taking up a lot of space. Well, that's where it might be fun to throw it into a layer mask. Make sense? And after that, you can do as much modification as you want. Just paint on the mask to either make an area show up or disappear. So the main thing we had to do, though, is in order to paste something into the mask must be visible. There are only two ways to make a mask visible. One is to view it directly by option clicking within the little thumbnail in the layers panel of the mask. That will make you view it. Or you can press the backslash key, which usually overlays it as a red overlay. But if you haven't put anything in the mask yet, if you haven't done any painting, when you hit the backslash key, it won't look like anything happened because there's no black in the mask to overlay. It's still trying to. It's just there's nothing there for it to show up yet. And you choose paste, then you can turn off that overlay by hitting backslash again. And we can do all sorts of things there. Any questions before I close this? Because it's usually instantaneously after I close them that somebody asks the question, would it be useful to still have it?
So you could do something like this if you wanted to change the pattern or texture or color of her dress specifically?
Well, the problem with that is that whatever it is I put in there is not going to bend and ripple and all that in the same way that her body does and the fabric does. Now, we could make it so the photo actually does get bent the same way as this outfit, although it's difficult to do when it's black, because right now, can you actually see the wrinkles and bends and things? Not really. If she was wearing a gray outfit, it would actually be easiest, because then you can actually see shadows and highlights showing up. It's when they're wearing black or white that it's difficult, because on white you can't see highlights, because what's brighter than white? You know, it's already so bright. Or when it's black, where the shadowy parts are going to go into nothingness. So no, this is more of just a creative treatment. You want to combine two images together and get something interesting. Oftentimes what you'll do here is you'll find somebody that is passionate about a particular thing, and you'll take whatever they're passionate about and put it in there, and they'll love it because they'll be like, oh, I love flowers, and you did something with them and flowers that is something put together that's interesting. Or I love nature, so you put a nature scene in there or something else. But if we wanted to actually make it look as if a piece of something else is bent around this, then we would have to use something called a displacement map. And we'll cover that.